Hello and welcome to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiegue, live today on June the 7th to go through another round of NFL stories with you guys today. A special edition once again on today's episode. The first topic we'll talk about is the wide receiver deals, just going over and having a discussion on who got some extensions this offseason and who could be in line to receive a couple more. And also looking at the quarterback situation similarly to the wide receivers, who's in line for an extension and what sort of number could be in line for them, plus some more rankings across the divisions in the NFL, this time switching over to the running backs and going through the NFC North division, Vikings, Bears, Packers, and the Lions, all coming up on today's show, plus a lot more. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. And also, as a reminder, if you have any questions or comments you want to make, use the tip and donations link, gsmcpodcast.net, that you see on your screen. By using that, I'm able to see your comment or question and get your guys' thoughts on anything I say or on any of the topics discussed on today's show. It's a massive help for the network, so if you would, please use the tip and donations link with any of your questions or comments. But like I mentioned, it is a special edition because we got two guests on today's show. I'm bringing them on the screen now. I got the host of the GSMC Football Podcast in Kenneth, and also Emran making his first appearance on my show, the host of the GSMC Soccer Podcast as well. We're going to go over a few topics, guys, but first, how are you guys doing today?
Doing well, doing well.
I'm doing great, Manny.
Perfect, perfect. So yeah, we're just gonna get right into it. Talking about the wide receivers first on hand, with a lot of extensions going down so far. 8 receivers have been handed new extensions this offseason. Just a couple of names to throw out there: Justin Jefferson, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown. A lot of guys have gotten extensions and have gotten paid pretty well so far. Just based on everything they got this off season. So I just want to get your guys' initial thoughts first off. I'll start with you, Emran. From the extensions that have been given out so far this year, who do you think? Which one of these deals sort of surprised you the most? The most when you heard it first be announced?
Mm, I would. None of them have been hugely surprising to me. I think the one I least expected. I am a Niner fan. Was the policy? I said policy. The McCaffrey one, the Christian McCaffrey one. In the fact, not because of the money that he's owed, but because of the fact that we still haven't re-signed Brandon Aiyuk, the main storyline of this offseason. We haven't really dealt with that situation. We don't know exactly what the wide receiver outlook is for the team long term. When you look at the fact that we drafted Ricky Pearsall, and you thought maybe that's a sign that at least Jawan Jennings is gone. But then a few days ago, before that, we actually re-signed him. So interested on that. And obviously, 19 million a year for a running back at 28, you would seem that's a lot. But when you look in the fact that a guy like Tee Higgins, he's probably gonna get, or he's gonna have what, 25, 26, $27 million deal. That's his value. McCaffrey for 19 million looks like a bargain.
Kenneth, anyone that surprised you? Maybe just if they re-signed or how much money they got, maybe.
I guess because I covered it was a Nico Collins deal. I that one I think caught me a little bit by surprise. Not to say that he doesn't deserve to get paid. I'm just saying that I didn't expect him to get an extension. And he had a great year last season. And yeah, he was kind of one of those guys that you really didn't hear about that much because, the Texans were kind of, looking for that next quarterback. I mean, he was playing with Davis Mills and Tyrod Taylor, and then the Texans went out and they got CJ Stroud, and they really formed a strong connection. And I'm really excited to see how they're able to build on that in 2024. And you got Stephon Diggs now in the fold, and of course Tank Dell as well going into his second year. So I'm excited about the Texans, as a whole with their offense. So that's probably one deal that I would say I was maybe a little bit surprised, but he definitely deserved it after the season that he had. And then also I wanted to bring up Amon-Ra St. Brown as well, one of the more underrated receivers, I would say, in the NFL. And I think the Lions, they did a great job signing him long term, signing Penei Sewell to an extension on the offensive line, and of course getting Jared Goff paid too recently. That's another deal I would say I was happy to see as well.
Yeah, I mean those are two good ones. The Nico Collins one especially, just because I felt like he was gonna happen later in the season, but also just for me, looking at the one AJ Brown got again, not to say that he didn't deserve it because he's been phenomenal for the Eagles, but it just happened so quick. I didn't hear anything about it leading up to the draft, and then it just happened. I think on the first night of the NFL draft, and he became the highest paid wide receiver for the time being. Obviously, until Justin Jefferson got his, and now he's set for a longer period with the Vikings. So that sort of leads into my next question. I'll go back to Emran here. Emran, which team do you think sort of, I guess, benefited the most from extending their wide receivers now up to this point? Maybe some teams doing it quicker than others, maybe saving a few bucks here and there. What are your thoughts on who maybe benefited the most by re-signing their wide receivers?
I think actually he said Nico Collins. I think Nico and Texans long term are going to be the ones that benefit the most because I feel like what they signed for Nico Collins at the rate, it's only going to go up. And, if they waited like, the Niners are currently doing with Ayuk or the Vikings did with Jefferson, if they waited till that last year, I think, and Nico Collins ended up having another good year, I think he would have definitely broke the bank like broke the double wing. So I think long term wise, now it seems like the Texans, why'd you settle in early? That's what it seems like at this point. But I think they were very clever in the way that they did it with not waiting. Because you see, a lot of these teams, they end up getting melted by these teams when it comes to, or by these agents when it comes to waiting till the last minute. All it does is keep drive. The market value, how that works, which I don't understand it. But in the NFL, there's, any any level of any star level type of player, they always go get the next deal, the next highest deal, even if they're not at that level yet. But so I think the Texans long term are really going to benefit after getting it done early.
How about you,
Mhm.
Kenneth? Who do you think benefited the most by extending their wide receivers maybe earlier than a lot of teams maybe?
Yeah, so and also to piggyback off of what Emran said with Nico Collins, the other thing too is with Stephon Diggs, he might just be there for 1 year and he might leave. So I guess that that also adds to the importance of getting one of your receivers extended. I would also so I would bring up Justin Jefferson. I think that is very important because right now the Vikings, you have a young quarterback, and I just talked about him on the show today. I was talking about the Vikings depth chart, and it seems like they're taking a patient approach with JJ McCarthy. And right now, I think they have him listed as the quarterback three, which we shouldn't take. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not really going to overreact over it. I mean, they talk about him struggling in practice. I mean, we're seeing that with Caleb Williams too. So, yeah, but it's not a big deal. But I think Justin Jefferson, getting him locked up long term, that's huge. He's arguably the best wide receiver in the game. And he talked about how he wants to take on that mentorship role, and kind of help JJ McCarthy along here. And I think that's great, knowing that you have arguably the best receiver in your corner to give you confidence. So I think that's important. And they have a decent number two wide receiver in Addison. I think he seems like he's going to be a good player. But the Vikings wanted to get this done with Justin Jefferson, and he could definitely help JJ McCarthy along when he eventually does take over as the starter. Because it seems like right now Sam Darnold is probably going to start the year, and we'll see if JJ McCarthy plays at all. But I would say Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I like that choice there because it sort of leads into my next question, a little bit focusing in on Ceedee Lamb and this next wave of wide receivers that could get paid. Ceedee Lamb, potentially Jamar Chase, Tee Higgins on the franchise tag, and also Brandon Aiyuk there as well. I guess simplest question, just first off, who do you guys think? I'll go back to Emran here. Who do you think will be the next wide receiver to get paid out of those four that I mentioned there? Aiyuk, Tee Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Ceedee Lamb there.
Um, I think it has to be Ayuk with the fact that he is holding out. He is the one out of the four giving the most, and we're giving the most pressure. Now, the CD Lamb situation is interesting. Now, that's one also, I think those are the top two, but they also have, they have other worries, major worries in Dallas to worry about when it comes to, Dak and Micah Parsons. I think the level of importance with the Niners re-signing Brandon Aiyuk is a little bit of a higher priority right now than maybe with the Cowboys, even though they're both holding out. I think as far as Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase, I don't think Bengals will give Tee Higgins. I think Tee Higgins will be a wide receiver for another team eventually. I don't think he'll get that deal from Cincinnati, and I think Jamar Chase will, he'll get re-signed, but the level of urgency with Brandon Aiyuk and Ceedee Lamb is far higher than with Jamar Chase.
And Kenneth, same question, but also just an additional topic. Do you think if and when Ceedee Lamb gets extended, do you think he could have a chance to reset the market, or do you think they'll leave it alone there with Justin Jefferson?
Because I know it's something we did bring up in the production meeting. Because I mean, the Cowboys, they were kind of waiting to see what kind of contract Justin Jefferson would get, and yeah, I don't really know. It's tough to say. CeeDee Lamb's coming off of his best season, so if he does reset the market, that doesn't surprise me. Um, but yeah, it's tough to say. I'm not really sure. Oh yeah,
Bad.
go ahead, Emran. Yeah, what's up?
I think the Cowboys have completely botched the CeeDee Lamb situation exactly the same way they botched the Dak situation a few years ago. They had a chance to give Dak a much friendlier deal than what they did. They decided to bet against their quarterback. Now they're sitting here saying they wanted, like, if that's what their mindset was of wanting to wait to see how much Jefferson was getting. I think that's beyond crazy. I'm not even using the word that I was going to use, but I hope y'all know what I was trying to say. That's beyond crazy to me because CeeDee Lamb put up 1,900-yard receiver. He has every right to say, "Oh, I want to match whatever the top wide receiver is making." The way
Yeah, I agree. I
work,
agree. I agree 100%.
the
I
Cowboys have really
and I
botched it.
think I think ultimately, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think CD is safe. Like he's going to be with the Cowboys. I think Dak is gone. I think he's going elsewhere. But that's just me. And then Micah Parsons, I know he's looking for a new deal. That's more down the line. But yeah, I think out of those three guys, Dak Prescott's probably gone.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And just it is a weird situation just because, like you mentioned, Kenneth, CD is coming off of his best year, and from a team standpoint, you want to obviously keep him because if you were to lose CD, I don't think they will, but just say that could be a possibility, then you really don't have too many options because you let go of Michael Gallup. You have Jalen Tolbert there, but he's not really somebody proven yet. You have Brandon Cooks also, but you need as many playmakers on this team because then at the end of the day, if Dak is supposed to get up to like $60 or $55 million or $50 million, then you might not be able to keep him also and still build a competitive team. So they're, like Emran said, in a very tough situation team wise there to stay competitive. But the last question I'll ask you guys before we go into a break is a little bit something that Emran touched on before. These wide receivers getting these massive deals. I'll start with you again, Emran. Do you think this is something that's beneficial for the NFL, getting the wide receivers specifically these massive deals, or do you think maybe another position group deserves to be paid a little bit more friendlier than they are currently being paid?
For the NFL, can you what do you mean by the NFL? Like in general, like is this smart for wide receivers to be like paid this much in terms of
Yeah, I
okay.
mean, like you mentioned Christian McCaffrey before. Like running backs are barely paid anything compared to wide receivers, and I don't know how you guys maybe view how much a running back value is compared to a wide receiver on a team. Do you think it's fair, I guess, to rephrase the question a little bit, that wide receivers are getting paid this much compared to, I don't know, a running back or offensive linemen who really dictate a lot of how your offense looks? Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's the way it should go here in the NFL?
Well, no, it's not fair at all. I think football is the only sport that gets it wrong when it comes to paying position groups. I think in other sports they pay the player, which I think that should be the right way to go. But yeah, no, absolutely. Wide receivers don't get paid, don't deserve to get paid almost double the salary of a running back at the same competence. Running backs are the ones that get hit on a daily basis. They're the ones that actually have shorter careers because of the amount of, physicality that comes with that position. So if anything, they should be the ones that pay more. I agree with paying with the players, but definitely I don't agree with how it is. But at the end of the day, the market dictates the value, and it seems like this day and age, it wasn't like this always. Running backs used to be the pick of, the main part of the market, but now in this, West Coast high flying offense we live in, you need these superstar type receivers to make it easier for the quarterback. Absolutely, it's not fair and it's not right, but again, the market dictates how players are paid.
Kenneth, what do you think here?
Yeah, I don't really have much to add, but I mean, for me, it also has to, I feel like the individual player as well. I think that's big because I mean, Christian McCaffrey, like we talked about that as well in the production meeting too, about how much money he got. And for me, it wasn't surprising because I think he's the best running back in the NFL and he could do so many different things. And I think he's in a great situation with the 49ers. I think part of the reason why he got hurt is because of the situation that he was in Carolina. I think he's in a much better situation with the 49ers. They're a well-run organization. And I think, that has part to do with it. But yeah, I mean, there's money's going to keep going up. And it's not just in football, but it's in other sports as well. I mean, you see it like, especially like in baseball, the contracts that they get in baseball too. But obviously it's different because there's a salary cap in football. There's just not a salary cap in baseball. But yeah, that's really my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm probably with you guys in the same boat there, but that's probably the end of that segment. We'll put a pin in that, and then when we come back after the break, we'll talk some more similarly around contracts, this time around some of the quarterbacks that could get paid potentially during the rest of this offseason. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't need shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. To get into the second segment of the show, back again with Kenneth and Emran here. Now focusing in on the quarterbacks a little bit. The last quarterback to get an extension this offseason was Jared Goff. He got a massive 4-year, $212 million deal, $53 million per year, making him the second highest earning quarterback in the NFL. And now the main talk is really around 4 names. Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence, and Dak Prescott. I think basically all of them have said that they would like to get a deal done before training camp, ideally for each of their situations. So now I'll bring the question to you guys. I'll start with Kenneth this time. Who do you think, just in your mind, has the best situation now to get paid earlier than the rest of these other 3 quarterbacks at the moment?
I mean, it seems like I feel like it's either going to be Trevor Lawrence or Jordan Love. I don't know. Just from what I've seen, what I've been reading a little bit, I think it's going to be one of those two. I think I mean, it's tough to say again because you're not close to the situation, but that's probably my guess. I know. I mean, Jordan Love, like towards the end of last year, he was unbelievable. Played really well, and he deserves another contract. Trevor Lawrence, there's some criticisms with him, especially with how last year ended for the Jaguars. I mean, I thought after they beat the Texans the second time in Houston, I thought the division was all locked up. I thought they were good to go and they were going to make the playoffs again. And that was not the case. They ended up finishing 9-8 and they missed the playoffs. They lose that game to the Titans. And that was a disappointing end to their season. And I think part of that too was he got banged up a lot. I mean, he had concussions. He had, I think, a knee injury too. I mean, he had a lot of things going on, and I think that was part of it too, as to why the Jaguars finished the way they did. But I'm on the positive side with Trevor Lawrence. I think he also deserves a contract as well. But that would be my guess. I think it's going to be one of those two guys because I know we just talked about the Cowboys a little bit. I said I think Dak might be gone. And then when it comes to Tua, I don't want to give Tua a new contract, but it seems like they are going to give him that contract. So, but that would be my guess. It's either going to be Trevor Lawrence or Jordan Love is going to be the next one to get paid.
How about you, Emran? Who do you think out of Tua, Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott? Or actually, I'll switch the question a little bit, Emran. In your opinion, who do you think deserves to be paid first out of the four that I just named?
No, well, I think out of all four quarterbacks, there's only one quarterback, in my opinion, that can confidently walk into the negotiation room, and I don't think there will be any hesitation from the front office, the opposing front office. And for me, that's Jordan Love, based on the season he had last season. Like whenever you're in your first year starting, you're looking for progression. And man, if you look at that first game compared to the last, the progression has been there. Each game he steadily improved. And even earlier when he was struggling, he still had amazing second halves and brought his team back. I was very, very impressed with Jordan Love all season. What he did in the playoffs, that game, he gave me a heart attack against the Niners. Did fall a little bit at the end, but that you expect that from a rookie. So for me, he definitely is the one that has the biggest leg to stand on. It was interesting your comments regarding not wanting to pay Tua, but still talking to Kenneth, but being okay with paying Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is a guy that's kind of been, especially before the end of this past season, his name has been carried by how good of a prospect he was coming in. I've never been a huge fan of him. I don't think he's a game changer at QB that you expect from a number one overall pick. I think there's been times that he hesitates in the pocket. There's been times that he just doesn't give you a feel of like, oh, this is the guy that's gonna bring us back into the game. Yes, he did come with that comeback against I forgot who
The
was
Chargers.
Chargers, yeah, with that playoff game and went on that run to the divisional. But he's never struck me as a guy that I had confidence in going into a game with. And I think Tua has had more consistency, in my opinion, despite, sometimes him falling. I think Tua, these past 2 years, he's been on long stretches of playing absolutely great football. But with Trevor Lawrence, I just don't see that sort of consistency, the way he folded at the end. And I personally, I think he's like a 14th, 15th quarterback in that caliber. And, there's been a lot of people that it's before the end of the last season that have him like almost top five, top six. I think that's been ridiculous. I think that has a lot to do with his name. And Dak Prescott, the writing is written on the wall. We just need to read the room. That's all I need to say regarding that. That
Yeah.
one's all going.
And you know what's funny about it? You guys both made good points there with Tua and Jordan Love there as well. I mentioned this before on I think the show yesterday or 2 shows ago that it's interesting how people talk about both quarterbacks, Jordan Love, Tua, and even Trevor Lawrence a little bit here because Tua, you mentioned the consistency and everything. This is the first real year that he has been healthy, so a part of me wants to think that he can't control the injuries, right? He can't control if he's healthy or injured the entire year. But with Trevor, he really hasn't been too injured until this last year, like you brought up, Kenneth. So, how you gauge or determine how well he has been in most years when he has been healthy compared to Tua, where he's been pretty unlucky with his injuries, I think is pretty interesting to talk about. And also, just before I mention my next question, Tua and Jordan Love also both coming off of their best years. Tua obviously being hurt before, and then Jordan Love not playing because you have Aaron Rodgers there. Again, it just strikes me a little bit weird how people talk about them, I think, in a different light, talking about Jordan Love a little bit higher than Tua. And I don't know why, just because they're both coming off of good years. Tua's been hurt, but they're both coming off one good year this past year, and I just think people talk about Jordan Love a little bit higher than Tua for some reason that they may believe. But leading into my next question now with these guys, and a lot of how you gauge these contract extensions, depends on how much better you think these quarterbacks can get if you're going to pay them for the next 4 to 5 years. So I'll go back to Kenneth. Kenneth, who do you think out of these four, has the greatest room to grow and get better and give their team the best shot of maybe making the playoffs more often, maybe winning a Super Bowl eventually? Who do you think is that guy out of these four?
I mean, when I look at the Dolphins, I mean, their skill position players are incredible with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and then the running backs as well, Raheem Mostert and Achan. Um, but for me, I feel like with Jordan Love and the Packers, he's going to grow with his receivers. They had the youngest receiving core in the league last year, and these guys, I mean, they're not all stars. I think the best receiver on the Packers is Christian Watson. But he's dealt with injuries over the last couple of seasons. But I do like Dontavian Wicks. I like Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs. I think all of them are going to grow and get even better. And that's something, I've touched upon it on my show too, just how last year they were kind of learning the offense and, you know, building rapport, between Jordan Love and the receivers. Now it's just, okay, let's take that next step this year. And I feel like the Packers as a team, they're going to be one of the top teams in the NFC. I think they're going to push Detroit for that division. I think Detroit's going to win it in my opinion still, but I think you got to put the Packers in the conversation as one of the top teams in the NFC regardless. But with the Dolphins, yeah, for me, I'm not really a Tua believer. I think he was solid last year, and I was happy that the previous season dealt with all the concussions. I was happy that that was put behind him and he had a healthy season. But if you look at the Dolphins season, the only team that they beat with a winning record last year was the Cowboys. And the Cowboys could not beat a team with a winning record on the road. And that was a home game for the Dolphins. They struggled against the Chiefs twice. I mean, the playoff game, I mean, it was just tough circumstances, especially with the weather. But when they played against the Ravens, the Ravens really, I mean, the Ravens destroyed them. The Bills beat them twice. That's why, for me, I'm just not really a believer in Tua in the long term. And he's one of those guys where the guys around you are going to elevate him. And I feel like that's going to be an issue for the Dolphins if they want to go further, if they want to win a playoff game, because I did a segment on that today too. Mike McDaniel talking about ending the playoff drought. They haven't won a playoff game in 24 years. They've made the playoffs the last 2 years, give them credit there, but they haven't been able to win. So I think that's going to be an issue. But yeah, for me, I think Jordan Love and the Packers, I mean, I think Love's going to have another solid season, and we'll see what the Packers can do.
Right. Same question to you, Emran. Who do you think out of Jordan Love, Tua, Trevor, and Dak has the most room to grow to sort of validate any sort of contract extension, a lot of money that they'll most likely get in their next contract?
I think it's funny that this is a topic regarding mostly quarterbacks aged 25 and younger, and we bring in Dak too. I think this is a kind of just an indictment on Dak, and I'm not defending him or anything. I think he deserves to be in these conversations just based on some of the great regular seasons and some of the huge meltdowns whenever it matters the most that came from him. So I definitely he's not the one. He's not the one I would think is on the ascendancy. He shouldn't even really be in this conversation with being 30. We know what he is and we know what he isn't. And at the end of the day, he's a decent quarterback that can't get you over the line. That'll never be good enough to get you over the line, especially on the ridiculous money that he gets paid. Now with Trevor Lawrence and Tua, I think they're in that similar boat. I think they're kind of like the peak that they could be is, especially with Trevor Lawrence, I think Tua has a little bit of a next level if he could stay healthy and he could and I don't know what's the most PG way to say this, but like, get some grit. I really believe in Tua's accuracy. I think Tua's a very, very accurate quarterback. His arm strength and all that, he doesn't have the best arm, but I really believe in his accuracy and I believe in the tangibles with him. Now, Trevor Lawrence, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. Before his career, he came out like he said in this article how football is just a hobby to him. And he kind of plays with that sort of persona. And I kind of can see that with the way he plays. I don't really believe in Trevor Lawrence in that manner. So, but obviously the clear one here is Jordan Love, just based on, I mean, that's the clear answer, just to make it short. The way he can throw on different platforms, he looks like Aaron Rodgers. He does. He really does. I mean,
he sat behind him for a while,
yeah, he
so
just sat behind, great arm. He just seems like a good leader. It seems like the tangibles is there. I like how he speaks in the post-game press conferences. He doesn't get too high, he doesn't get too low. That's very good. That's a very good trade for a franchise quarterback and a young franchise quarterback. That's even better. yeah, everything about him just screams, potential superstar in the making. And it's a little disappointing because, Green Bay, with these quarterbacks, you want to take advantage of them on a rookie deal. And, well, that rookie deal is wrapping up real soon. So, but it's the Green Bay way.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think just based on the the factors and everything, and how really it was a little bit weird with Green Bay because they didn't pick up the 5th-year option for Jordan Love, and instead they extended him for a cheaper deal. Obviously, it benefits them more than him, but I would probably agree with you guys. I think oddly enough, Dak is the quarterback that makes the most money out of all of them right now. He makes about $40 million. So talking about an extension, how long you want to make that, and how much more you want to pay him, is a little bit dicey there. But yeah, I would probably agree with you guys there. And I think just quickly before Zoom kicks us all off here, just your final thoughts. Give me your guys' ranking on all these 4 quarterbacks. We'll start with you, Kenneth. Rank them 1 to 4 for me here as we close out this segment.
Man, really putting me on the spot here. So I'd probably put Jordan Love 1. I'll give Dak respect, put him at 2. Trevor Lawrence 3, 2 or 4.
When you say this, you say based on this past season, like how, like a power rankings of this 4?
Yeah. Give me 1 to 4. Who would you have in that order?
Jordan Love 1. I'd go slightly Dak 2 or 3, and yeah, I'd have Trevor Lawrence dead last.
Okay, I like it.
All right, we'll see how it goes for the upcoming season. Tua versus Trevor Lawrence.
Are we gonna get that game this season?
I don't think so, but I guess we'll compare the stats and where the teams are at by the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be good. Same conference. The AFC's tight. The AFC's going to be very competitive.
I mean, it's absolutely loaded. I mean, there's maybe like 1 or 2 teams where you just are like, yeah, they got no shot of making the playoffs, but like, I mean, it's a gauntlet of a conference. So, but yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Absolutely, and yeah, that'll wrap it up for this segment, and that'll wrap it up for Kenneth and Emran on this show. Thank you. On that note, we will send it to a quick break, and when we return, I'll be back with you guys talking about some more rankings across the divisions in the NFC North, focusing in on the running backs this time around. So that and much more coming up after this break. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back here to the show, and in the third segment of today's episode, thanks again to Kenneth and Emran for joining me for those first 2 segments, but we're back again here ranking some more position groups across the NFL, this time focusing in on the running backs. I've done quarterbacks, wide receiver groups, or just receiving groups, and now we'll focus in on the running backs, starting again the cycle with the NFC North. A lot of good tandems and some triple groups here with the running back situation. So without further ado, I will start with the 4th ranked team on my list. I have the Minnesota Vikings as the 4th best team running back wise in this division. Not 3 running backs available to them. They only really have 2 of them. It is interesting just with Kevin O'Connell and this team, with all the weapons that they have, the majority of them, if you were to rank them, would probably be Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, and then you would get to the running backs, and I guess maybe a quarterback also in there depending on who it is. But then you get to the running backs is my point. They're probably towards the end of ranking these skill position groups, and that's not really what you'd love to see, obviously. And it is weird enough because they did get better, I believe, in terms of their number one running back. Last year they had Alexander Mattison as their lead back, and he didn't do great for them overall. He didn't score a rushing touchdown at all throughout the entire season, and as a team they only managed 7 rushing touchdowns from the entirety of the group. And then just also as a whole, statistics-wise, they were 29th in rushing yards per game at 91, and also 29th in the NFL as well in total yards rushing in the year at only 1,553 total yards rushing in the entire year last year. To give you guys a little bit of context, Christian McCaffrey, the offensive player of the year, the running back, I guess, of the year per se, he recorded 1,459 rushing yards just himself. And as a team, he almost outrushed the entirety of the Minnesota Vikings. So you can't have that, obviously. Now, you get Aaron Jones in there. I like him as an upgrade over Alexander Mattison, but the depth is really an issue for me in this division as well, where it's going to get pretty competitive, and if you are able to control the game and control the pace of everything, it would benefit you more often than not. But Ty Chandler is really the best other option that they have, and he, is sort of getting his feet wet a little bit more in the NFL. Last year, he was able not to produce the craziest numbers, similarly to Alexander Mattison, I think around 600 to 500 yards. So you need him to sort of spot Aaron Jones because he is also coming off a year where he took a lot of time off of the field because of that knee injury and his hamstring as well. So if you could get some more production out of him, I would like it a little bit more, but they don't have too many, and it's still an uncertainty with what you have with Ty Chandler. You can't rely too much on Aaron Jones, other than also the NFL is sort of getting away from just one running back. Most of them are going to a tandem at least. So with that being said, they do fall as the 4th ranked team in my power rankings. Then moving on to the 3rd team I have here in the NFC North, the Chicago Bears. Similarly to the Vikings, only 2 guys that really stand out to them, but they have just simply produced better without a top-tier running back last season. Their best rusher last year in terms of yards was Justin Fields, their quarterback, and Khalil Herbert was there as well, but now he sort of takes a little bit of a back seat there with DeAndre Swift coming in there after recording his first 1,000-yard season last season for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now he moves on in free agency to join the Bears, and I really like that move because I think now with DeAndre Swift sort of dealing with injuries in his first couple of years, I think it was, he played no more than 14 games in his first couple of years. Then this past season, he played the most of his entire career in 16. This is the sort of production you can expect from him, and it is odd that last season, like I mentioned, the Bears didn't really have a number one top-tier running back, at least to sort of divert the carries a little bit there with somebody else. But as a team, they managed to still rank number 2 in the NFL in total rushing yards and yards per game in the entire NFL as well. To give some context behind that, the Baltimore Ravens were number 1 in total rushing yards and in yards per game, and then the 49ers were number 3 in both of those categories as well. And the Chicago Bears were right up there with 2 teams that made it to the conference championships, and one of them made it to the Super Bowl. So that's really the recipe you'd want to follow. The Bears have everything else, it seems, that they need to have a great rushing attack, and now I think they definitely got better by bringing in DeAndre Swift to continue on that season that he had with the Eagles. I have confidence in him to do that, and also now Khalil Herbert, you'd hope to get a little bit more than 611 yards and only 2 touchdowns. Maybe having another guy there does help him bring his production up a little bit, but the passing game and the amount of talent that they just managed to bring in free agency and through the draft with a franchise generational quarterback, you bring in Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, you already had DJ Moore. This team is looking as well balanced as anybody in this division, but just on running backs, I'd like to see more. I'd like them to be a little healthy, so that's why they fall to number 3 in my rankings, which means out of the last 2 teams left, I have the Green Bay Packers as the second best running back group in this division. Compared to the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears, they actually have 3 solid options, as you guys see there on your screen. Josh Jacobs to your left, A.J. Dillon in the middle, and Marshawn Lloyd there, the rookie out of USC, as well, coming into the league, playing in his first season this year with the Green Bay Packers. And, a rookie, why did I include him in there? Maybe not a lot of rookies get the chance to play, especially when you got these two guys there to his left on the screen. But it is interesting with Marshawn Lloyd because I personally didn't know too much about him heading into this year, but I heard the Packers offensive coordinator talking about it a little bit more, and with Josh Jacobs, he mentioned that he would like to see him be the guy, the first option guy for this team because of how talented he is, multiple 1,000-yard seasons. And last year, he was banged up a little bit, but still recorded a very solid season. I think, again, another 1,000-yard season for Josh Jacobs. So he can sort of give you a little bit of that Aaron Jones aspect. I think they're probably on the same tier in terms of level, skill set, and how people would rank them across the NFL. So you have that. You don't really lose too much there with moving on from Aaron Jones. And then A.J. Dillon, he knows the system. He knows what his role is really coming in there as a change of pace guy, being more power to Josh Jacobs, potential more finesse, more of an all-around well-balanced guy in Josh Jacobs. You have A.J. Dillon there to come in, short yardage situations, get the Packers the hard-earned runs there. Because of how he's built, he is just a truck really out there for the Green Bay Packers to have there as a weapon. And then you bring in Marshawn Lloyd, who you'd hope to see transition very smoothly into the NFL, but it might take a little bit of time, which, again, benefits you having Josh Jacobs and A.J. Dillon there, two seasoned veterans. And now Marshawn Lloyd, at his peak in his rookie year, I think he could be exactly like the Packers offensive coordinator described, a change of pace, very fast guy there out of USC coming into his first year in the NFL. That is something that maybe Josh Jacobs can't really give you too much, just that raw, blazing speed out of the backfield, that quick twitch, reaction, agility that not a lot of guys can produce in short areas of space on the field. So he's that sort of running back for them. A little bit like Jahmyr Gibbs, to kind of give you guys my best comparison to him. If they could get the best out of all three of these guys, and maybe it might not show up in the stat sheet as one guy having 1,000 yards, but if all of them can sort of get, Josh Jacobs close to 1,000, A.J. Dillon chipping in with another 500 at least, Marshawn Lloyd again around the same amount, maybe more, I think that's a very solid group that you have there in Green Bay. You don't need one guy to just carry the ball over 130 times in a season, because that really doesn't lead to success later in the season. If you want to get there like most teams do, keeping all these guys fresh, I think, benefits the Packers more because they have more guys, and I think they are very well suited to compete with this running back group to lead them into 2024. But they aren't my number one ranked team. That falls to the Detroit Lions because, unlike the rest of them, I think the Lions want to run the ball first and foremost. I think they want to beat you up and punch you in the face with that offensive line. Very nasty group, very big group, and just they move as one. They are one of the most cohesive units in the NFL. And last year, you had David Montgomery, who I think people had their doubts around him. How would he look there trying to be that lead back in Detroit? But he recorded 1,000 yards for himself, and Jahmyr Gibbs in his first year recorded 945 yards as a rookie, 13 touchdowns for David Montgomery, and 13 touchdowns for Jahmyr Gibbs as well. They are a run-first team, almost like the Chicago Bears a little bit, but I think they've gotten more production, and they're just a little bit more experienced there. I think their offensive line is also just a little bit better than the Chicago Bears. They were also ranked in the top 5 for a lot of categories. 5th as a team in total yards, over 2,000 or over 2,300. 5th in yards per game, rushing 135.9 rushing yards per game. So this offensive line, they were able to bring most, if not all of them, back for this year. And you bring these two guys back as well. David Montgomery now getting better in his second year here. And Jahmyr Gibbs, who I expect a big jump out of him this season for the Detroit Lions. And also they mentioned of the possibility that he could be playing a little bit more slot receiver, trying him out there because of his quick agility and just the versatility that he brings also to add to this running back group and just the offense as a whole. That's another reason why I have them as the number one ranked team running backs wise, because they could just do almost everything that you would love to see out of your running back group. they're the most well-versed. They made it the furthest, so they have that under their belt. I think they're a run-first team, and that'll be what really their identity will be in 2024 again. And if they're able to produce anywhere near the level that they did last year, pretty much bringing everyone back, I think they're definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with in not just the NFC North, but also in the entirety of the NFC. Now with the Cowboys sort of teetering a little bit, the 49ers probably still being the 49ers most likely, you could see the Detroit Lions being right up there with them. They could have beat them in that NFC Championship game. They took their best shot at them, but then in the second half they sort of fell off, and that's where the inexperience kicked in. But bringing that experience back, having this running back group and the offensive line, like I mentioned, I think they could really compete with anybody in the NFC and pretty much probably in the NFL with the level of experience that they've gained. These two guys are going to be at the forefront of a lot of their success, so I'm excited to see it. But that is my list. Let me know what you guys think about it now that we're starting the running back ranking trend here on the show. Leave your guys' comments or reactions in the live chat box or also in the comment section after this video live show goes off of the air. But we will be right back in just a few seconds. We're going to take one more break here, and when we return, we got one more segment on today's show for you guys. We're going to be talking about the Eagles, sticking in the NFC, about Brandon Graham specifically, talking about the coordinators that they had in place last year for their defensive coordinator and their offensive coordinator, what the biggest difference are this year, and how much better it might feel for the Eagles to have more experienced guys there in those positions. Stick around to find out more on what he said. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. Welcome back here to the show. For the last segment on today's episode, we had two guests on before, so that might give you guys a reason as to why there only will be 4 segments on today's show. We got a lot out of Kenneth and Emran, so thank you to those guys yet again for joining me on today's show. But with the last segment of today's episode, like I mentioned, sticking with the NFC and talking about Brandon Graham and the issue sort of with their coordinators in 2023, or actually, before I do that, I will remind you guys for one last time, if you have any questions or comments you want to make, leave it in the chat box using the tip and donations link, gsmcpodcast.net, that you see there on your screen. By using that link, I'll be able to see your question or comment in the chat box, and that way I can get a feel of what you guys are thinking, what sort of perspective you guys have on anything I say or on any of the topics we have discussed on today's show. It's a massive help for the network as well, so if you would, please leave your questions or comments using that tip and donations link, gsmcpodcast.net. But going back to Brandon Graham and the coaching issues a little bit surrounding this team last year, that was a big talk around the Eagles and just a reason as to why, it looked the way it did last year. Towards the end of the year, they were 12-1, I want to say, at one point, and then the second half of the year really didn't go as planned. They sort of gave up that number 1 seed there towards the end, and they had to go on the road to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who as opposed to the Eagles were very much rolling at that point in the year. They were winning one consecutive games there to end the year and won the division in the last game of the season. So they were riding a big wave of momentum, whereas the Eagles were sort of trending downward because of the issues that they had, mostly on defense because of the communication and how sloppy it just looked from a outsider's perspective. I didn't tune into every game, but to the games that I did watch, I saw there was a lot of just missed assignments, not being disciplined with your gap assignments as well. The coverages also weren't great. There was just a lot of open guys where it seemed everybody was pointing at each other as to wondering why this guy was just open. The system and maybe the communication wasn't there, but a big part of it was the coordinators, and because of the issues you saw last year, both Sean Desai and Brian Johnson were let go of this offseason, and the Philadelphia Eagles brought in two new coordinators in Vic Fangio to coordinate that defense, and Kellen Moore being the offensive coordinator this year for the Philadelphia Eagles. Definitely, you get more experience now for sure with Moore and Vic Fangio. With the experience that Vic Fangio has and the defenses that typically tend to be one of the tougher ones to beat on a year-to-year basis, and Kellen Moore having a lot of success really with the Dallas Cowboys most recently and a little bit with the Chargers, but they were also not in the best of states to really benefit off of that. I think the Eagles are just as good of a team offensively for Kellen Moore to come in here, stick his game plan into all these players, and really have all the options and weapons available to him to really succeed in 2024. But now, how does this compare to last year? Well, one of the most experienced players, Brandon Graham on the Eagles, was asked something completely different about Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox, about how it would be like this season to sort of have them away from the team, not being part of the roster, and how would that experience be, for Brandon Graham, who has been there basically the entirety of time with Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox. They asked him what it would be like without them now, and he sort of took it and spun it a different way, bringing in the coordinators a little bit in his response by saying, I really think that last year, that's what we didn't have. We didn't have all the right coaches in the right position. I would say you can see the guys truly believing in what we got going on. I'm excited for the rookies coming in as well. That last part sort of touched on the life after Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox, but firstly, to just come out and say we didn't have all the right coaches in the right positions, it is pretty blunt and straightforward, and I don't think Brandon Graham is a guy to be questioned or anything like that. He's been a prominent figure for the Eagles for so long. Everybody loves him, and nobody is gonna, question him about what his opinion is. Everybody believes it. I believe it, that the coordinators and the coaches were a main issue, if not the main issue, but you don't typically see guys, just coming out and saying it like that. So that caught me off guard a little bit, but on top of the coordinators, just on the coaches like Brandon Graham mentioned, the Philadelphia Eagles also moved on from their defensive line coach, Tracy Rocker, their linebacker coach, DJ Elliott, and also their secondary coach in DJ McDonald. So a brand new slate of ideas and coaching coming in for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're going to definitely need it to try and regain any sort of identity and just toughness and character on that defensive side of the ball. The question it sort of brings up now for me with talking about the coaches and the coordinators, and obviously that plays a big part in it, but how much was it the coaching and how much was it the personnel and players that the Eagles had at the time being when they just started trending downward? I think if you were to put a percentage on it, I would still probably split it 70-30 or 60-40 in favor of the coaches really being the main proprietor of how it looked last season, but I don't think the player personnel gets talked about too much. Of course, you can succeed a lot if your coach is one of the all-time greats, coordinating, scheming you to get open and stuff like that, but if you don't have the talent to really compete with so much talent on the offensive side of the ball these days, it's going to look sloppy, and I think that the linebacker position was one to be questionable for the Eagles last year. They weren't really getting too much pass rush from their rookie superstar in Jalen Carter. After a great start to the year, he sort of died off a little bit, and that's nothing to really blame him on because he is a rookie. He hasn't played that much football an entire season in his life, so you can't really depend on him to carry you throughout the entire season. Their pass rush really died off there as well. In the secondary, Bradbury was targeted a lot from fans for the criticism he received and also not playing up to that standard and up to that contract that the Eagles gave him as well. And also just the safety position as well. There was a lot of holes is what I'm trying to say for the Eagles. And to blame it mostly on the coaching, to say it was 90% the coaches, I don't think is fair for some of the players that were on there as well to also assume responsibility. But, Brandon Graham went into it a little bit more, and certain things he sort of sees being the difference now with having a guy in there like Vic Fangio. And he said certain things would pop up, but it popped up in a big way that last game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Everything I learned, you just want to make sure we had a proper communication. So there's real big communication going on right now within the locker room, on the field, and in the classroom. He also highlighted his excitement with Vic Fangio and how everyone now seems to just be on the same page and knows what their assignment is supposed to be, what Vic Fangio and what this identity is supposed to look like now in 2024 with a more experienced coach in there. And not to sort of dump it all on Sean Desai and Brian Johnson, but to come into a season where you have the talent, and maybe you could say they over-relied on it a little bit, at least on the offensive side. Brian Johnson coming into the Eagles and being that offensive coordinator, not too many people really know about him. And of course that doesn't really matter too much, but at some point, having a guy like that, managing all those personalities, characters, if you haven't really done it before and have too much experience with it, it's going to get a little bit too big, and it's going to seem like the moment is a bit too big for you throughout the season. And that's what it seemed to be at some points with Brian Johnson and how they maneuvered everything. There was a lot of coaches switching, especially on the defensive side of the ball, with Sean Desai getting moved up to the booth after Week 15, and then Matt Patricia really taking over the play calling after that for the last, I want to say, 6 games of the regular season and then into the playoffs. It didn't get much better after that, and having all these new ideas coming in with Matt Patricia and knowing what one guy wants, what another guy doesn't want, and how it's supposed to look, none of that equals a recipe for success for the Eagles. And you get games like against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers where they just seem to have the wheels fall off, and it didn't look at all like the team we saw in 2022 to make it to the Super Bowl. But to give you guys a little bit more information on what sort of production we were seeing out there from the defense with Sean Desai, in his last 6 games as the play caller, he was last in third down defense, allowing third down conversions on 54.8% of the time. Also last in red zone defense, allowing touchdowns or conversions 78.3% of the time, allowing an NFL high 428 yards per game and 297.8 passing yards per game at the time in those last 6 games, and also was second to last in the NFL in points per game allowed at 30. In those last 6 games, you don't need to be a genius to know that those numbers, with the team that the Eagles have, playing in a decently tough conference, or at least decently tough division, and a very tricky NFC conference, it's not going to slide. All these teams are getting better in the NFC compared to the AFC, where it seems like everyone is right about their prime. The NFC is slowly getting better with all the young players that they have and new teams sort of popping up out of every division. This team, the Eagles, to sort of drop the ball a little bit there with Sean Desai, you just can't have it with everyone hitting their stride there towards the end and in his last 6 games. To be almost last in all these categories is not what you're looking for, obviously, for the Eagles. And also then you look at Matt Patricia. Didn't get too much better after Week 15 when he took over as the play caller. He was 28th in yards per game, allowing 375, 26th in rushing yards per game allowed at 131, 24th in passing yards per game allowed at 244, 26th in yards per play, allowing 5.8 yards per play as the defensive coordinator, and also 4th to last in points per game allowed at 28 points allowed there per game during his time as the play caller. So what does this all mean now? Basically that it can't get worse. It can't get worse for the Eagles based on those numbers and based on the coaching carousel, coaching circus that you had, moving some people up, getting rid of guys, changing the responsibilities with these coaches. Now you bring in more, I would say, proven guys to sort of help out this defense, as well as losing Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce. You get an influx of younger talent that could help you out a lot, I believe, in guys like Devin White, CJ Gardner-Johnson coming in. Quinyon Mitchell, I was very high on that they drafted this year. I think he can make a quick impact right away, and also Cooper DeJean as well in the second round. This team got younger, more athletic, with some more proven players like Devin White and CJ Gardner-Johnson. It's definitely going to help out a lot. I'd like to see the pass rush, be a little bit more consistent. I think it will be with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. I'm pretty sure is his name. Also being in there, two young guys there in the middle. The pass rush on the outsides is a little bit questionable, but overall they definitely got better. And again, the biggest point to make is that it's hard to get worse than those numbers that I just mentioned from Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. So it is looking up for the Eagles. They got Saquon Barkley on the offensive side of the ball. That never hurts to just, if your defense isn't working, you can at least try and outscore the opposition with the excess of talent that they have on the offensive side of the ball. It's going to take some time to learn it as well on both sides with Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio coming in, but very high on this Eagles team this year. They have the talent. They just now have to prove it in a lot of people's minds. If things don't go well, what does that mean for Nick Sirianni? Maybe some people start questioning Jalen Hurts a little bit more. You don't want to see that, so the Eagles definitely have a lot to prove again this year, and they have everything in place, so they should be in a good spot to do that in 2024. But that'll do it for today's episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I want to thank you guys for joining me today, and also remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok as well for more of the network's content. And if you want to see more of me and this show, check out the GSMC Sports Network channel and the GSMC Podcast Network channel for a ton of more content out there regarding football and different sorts of ways we talk about different topics around the NFL. As a final reminder, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more conversations and NFL discussions with me, Manny Maradiegue, as your host, signing off for the last time this week. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and I hope to see you guys all back here again joining me on Monday.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn.